that multilateralism is not only viable for resolving conflict and building consensus, but that it is also a veritable means for supporting one another in times of need. The president added that the people of Lebanon have shown us the true spirit of their proud country. In the days since the deadly explosion, we have been deeply moved by images of Lebanese citizens picking up the pieces, extending acts of kindness and solidarity towards their neighbors who have lost everything. It is upon us to band together and ensure that they will not have to shoulder this burden alone. And the General Assembly adopted a decision to postpone the closing date of its 74th session to Tuesday, 15th of September. That's the same date for the opening of the 75th session of the Assembly. And I have shared with you this earlier, but it's worth reminding again that the President of the General Assembly, Tijani Muhammad Bandi, circulated a letter from the President-elect of the 75th session, Volkan Bozkır, conveying the theme for the general debate of the session. The theme is the future we want, the United Nations we need, reaffirming our collective commitment to multilateralism, confronting COVID-19 through collective multilateral action. This week, the President of the General Assembly invited 6 former presidents of the Assembly and the President-elect of the 75th session for a virtual meeting to welcome the PGA-elect and offer an opportunity for exchanging experiences and ideas. They talked about many issues, including the importance of multilateralism, especially today, when the world is facing many common challenges, among them the COVID-19 pandemic. The President also circulated a letter yesterday informing the membership that the high-level plenary meeting of the General Assembly to commemorate and promote the International Day for the Total Elimination of Nuclear Weapons will take place on Friday, 2nd of October, during the 75th session of the General Assembly. The meeting will be convened primarily in a virtual format with all statements pre-recorded. The high-level meeting will raise awareness about the threat posed to humanity by nuclear weapons and the necessity for their total elimination in order to mobilize international efforts towards achieving the common goal of a nuclear weapon-free world. In another decision, the Assembly decided to hold the 14th United Nations Congress on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice in Kyoto, Japan, from the 7th to 12th of March 2021, with pre-Congress consultations to be held on 6th of March. The Congress was scheduled to be held from 20th to 27th of April before it was postponed earlier until further notice because of the COVID-19 global pandemic. And on International Youth Day, the President of the General Assembly said that young people are the trailblazers of progress as entrepreneurs, activists, and community leaders. They do not only inspire change, but they create it. In the era of COVID-19 and the long-lasting social and economic negative effects it has on youth, and with only 10 years left to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, the President said that the vision and commitment of youth are paramount to creating a more sustainable and inclusive world. The President encouraged young change makers from all over the world to take part in the upcoming virtual UN 75 Youth Plenary on September 9th and add their voices to shaping the United Nations for decades ahead. The Youth Plenary will provide a valuable platform to capture ideas and solutions from young people for the decade of action and delivery to implement the Sustainable Development Goals and galvanize support for multilateralism. The event will designate also youth representatives who will address the high-level event on September 21st under the theme, The Future We Want, the UN We Need, reaffirming our collective commitment to multilateralism. And this is everything for me. If you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, I don't see any questions on the chat. I'll just give a couple of seconds to make sure that nothing is there. Okay, yes, question from Toby, please.
Hi, Reem. Sorry, I just missed the top of your briefing, and you were saying things about a nuclear weapons-free world. What? Can you just repeat that? I apologize.
No, absolutely. Yesterday, the president circulated a letter. He informed the membership that the high-level plenary meeting to commemorate and promote the International Day for the total elimination of nuclear weapons will be on Friday, 2nd of October. And we have all the information on our website. I can share with you after.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Yes, Iftikhar, please.
Reem, I also missed first part of your briefing because I was trying to get in and was not connecting. So are you planning to issue some kind of a transcript, or I don't want you to repeat the whole thing, but
yes.
Especially about General Assembly's session, if you can put out a small transcript, I'll be grateful. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. On our website, we always post the transcript under media. If you went to un.org/PGA/74, I will share the link with you via email. And you go to media, you will find the spokesperson's briefing, and we post all the text of the briefing over there, the elements with the video. It will take just a little bit of time for the video to be posted on Web TV, and then we post both. But I will send you the link for sure.
Okay. If you send me directly, it will be fine. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Nabil, please.
Hi, Reem. Thank you so much. I will make sure I'm recording. Yes. So I would like to know if there is any reaction from the President of the General Assembly on the United Arab Emirates-Israel agreement. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, for sure. For the PGA, the ultimate goal and what he hopes for, that a just and comprehensive solution for the conflict will be reached to ensure justice, peace, security, and development for both the Israeli and Palestinian peoples and the whole region. The President of the General Assembly has said before that he welcomes all initiatives and efforts that could lead to this solution, including the joint statement. And the PGA believes also that we have to reiterate that he believes that annexation is illegal under international law and it will worsen the situation. He urges all parties to resume negotiations and to adhere to relevant UN resolutions in this regard. Thank you. Any other questions, please? Okay, nothing. So Stéphane will start at 12:15. So 5 more minutes. Please stay online and he will join you momentarily. Thank you so much and have a nice weekend.
Hi. Listen, I'm just apologies. I'm waiting for a statement on Yemen. So just a few more seconds, and we can all get our weekends started. We've got quite a lot of news for today. All right. Good afternoon. So I will start off with Yemen. We're taking kind of the just-in-time delivery approach of statements, I think, to a new high, unfortunately, or a new low, depending on how you see it. So on Yemen, I can tell you that the Secretary General is deeply concerned about the condition of the Safar oil tanker moored off the western coast of Yemen. The aging tanker has almost no maintenance since 2015 and risks causing a major oil spill, explosion, or fire that would have catastrophic environmental and humanitarian consequences for Yemen and the region. In particular, a potential oil leak into the Red Sea would severely harm Red Sea ecosystems relied on by 30 million people across the region. It would moreover force the closure of Hudaydah port for many months, which would exacerbate Yemen's already severe economic crisis and cut off millions of people from access to food and other essential commodities. The Secretary General urges the removal of any obstacles to the efforts needed to mitigate the dangers posed by the tanker without delay. He specifically calls for granting of independent technical experts unconditional access to the tanker and to assess its conditions and conduct any possible initial repairs. This technical assessment will provide crucial scientific evidence for next steps to be taken in order to avert a catastrophe. Turning to Lebanon, the UN, we are asking today for $565 million to help the people of Lebanon move from immediate life-saving humanitarian relief to recovery and construction, and eventually towards longer-term economic recovery following the Beirut port explosions. Properly funded, these efforts will enable the humanitarian partners to help people in need by targeting food security, health, shelter, and protection, as well as water and sanitation hygiene support. The resident humanitarian coordinator, Najat Roshdi, urged the international community to demonstrate steadfast commitment to the people of Lebanon and repay in turns Lebanon's incredible generosity that it has shown towards Syrian and Palestinian refugees with full financial support. We've also been informed today that nearly 100 UNIFIL peacekeepers, both military and civilians, donated blood yesterday and today for the victims of the horrific explosions. Working in coordination with the Lebanese Red Cross, UNIFIL personnel donated blood in the mission's hospital in Nakora in South Lebanon. Last week, UNIFIL personnel joined a collective effort of UN staff unions in Lebanon as part of the UN for Beirut initiative to clean up streets of the Beirut district devastated by the explosions. Turning to Belarus, the Secretary General continues to follow the situation in Belarus very closely. We welcome the reported release of some of the detainees last night and urge this to continue. We're deeply disturbed by the reports and allegations of torture and mistreatment of persons under detention, including young people and journalists. We also take note of the statement of regret by the Ministry of Interior of Belarus regarding the use of force and expect these incidents and claims to be investigated thoroughly. We remain in touch with Belarusian authorities in New York, Geneva, and Minsk regarding the unfolding situation. And in a statement we issued yesterday on the joint statement issued by the U.S. U.S. President Donald J. Trump, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, and His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, suspends Israeli annexation plans over parts of the occupied West Bank. This is something the Secretary General has consistently called for. Annexation would effectively close the door for a renewal of negotiations and destroy the prospects of a viable Palestinian state and the two-state solution. The Secretary General welcomes this agreement and hopes it will create an opportunity for Israeli and Palestinian leaders to re-engage in meaningful negotiations that will realize a two-state solution in line with relevant UN resolutions, international law, and bilateral agreements. Peace in the Middle East is more important than ever as the region confronts the grave threats posed by COVID-19 and radicalization. The Secretary General will continue to work with all sides to open further possibilities for dialogue, peace, and stability. Turning to Syria, the resident UN coordinator and humanitarian coordinator for that country, Imran Reza, has expressed concern and alarm over the recent deaths of 8 children under the age of 5 last week in Al-Hol camp in northeast Syria. The children, who died between the 6th and the 10th of August, were suffering from a range of illness, including malnutrition, related complications, dehydration from diarrhea, heart failure, and internal bleeding and hypoglycemia. The UN and humanitarian partners continue to provide a range of critical assistance to Al-Hol. However, UN access to some basic services, including regular water supply and emergency health care, has been increasingly compromised in the recent months because of the disruptions to the water supply from Al-Hol water station and COVID-19 precautionary measures, among other reasons. Turning to Cameroon, we have seen recent reports of serious human rights violations and abuses in that country, including shocking video allegedly showing the brutal murder of a young woman in Muyuka in the southwest. We strongly and unequivocally condemn this atrocious act of violence. We call on the authorities to swiftly launch an investigation into these allegations and to ensure that those responsible are brought to justice. We call on armed actors to refrain from attacks against civilians, to respect international humanitarian and international human rights law, and join the Secretary General's call for a global ceasefire as the world fights the pandemic. We reiterate the readiness of the UN to work with all stakeholders towards a political solution to the crisis in the northwest and southwest of Cameroon through meaningful dialogue. And I have an update on the situation in South Sudan's Tanj region from our peacekeeping mission. As you know, Tanj was the scene of violent clashes last week between members of the South Sudan People's Defense Forces and armed youth. The UN mission team, which arrived in Tanj earlier this week, heard from local authorities that at least 150 people were killed and up to 5,000 families have now been displaced by the clashes. The mission tells us that 45 troops plus 2 UN military observers and 2 community liaison officers are on the ground. UN peacekeepers have carried out patrols to deter a fresh outbreak of violence in the town, where they've set up a temporary operating base, as well as the nearby villages of Amet and Mabior Yar. The peacekeepers have also continued to meet with local authorities, community leaders, and youth to support the reconciliation efforts. Peacekeepers are trying to reach Romich, which was reportedly the epicenter of the violence, which is about 100 kilometers east of Tanj. But as we've told you, the road remains impassable because of heavy flooding. The mission hopes to undertake an air patrol tomorrow, together with the governor of Warrap State and other local officials. And turning to Nigeria, the humanitarian coordinator for that country, Edward Cologne, said yesterday that Nigeria, in particular the states of Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe, are facing unprecedented challenges. In an online humanitarian briefing, which brought together governments and aid organizations, Mr. Cologne said that a resurgence of violence continues to ravage entire communities and that Nigeria is also facing extraordinary challenges from the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Cologne warned that the hard-won gains made a few years ago in averting famine is in jeopardy, and that at least 10.6 million people in the northeast of Nigeria need humanitarian aid. The UN we and our partners are appealing for $1 billion to help 7.5 million vulnerable people, but less than a third of those funds have been received. Despite the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic and the growing insecurity, aid workers have reached 2.6 million people with assistance during the first half of the year. Mr. Colon acknowledged that many donors are facing challenges due to the pandemic, but appealed for coordinated action and sufficient resources to prevent humanitarian crisis in the Northeast from reaching catastrophic levels. And in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, as more people are impacted by conflict and the COVID-19 pandemic, the World Food Program is appealing for additional support to reduce food insecurity. The agency says that 4 in 10 people in the country are food insecure. Nearly 60 million people are facing, quote, crisis or emergency hunger levels. This year's harvest is expected to be below average in much of the DRC because of drought, flooding, and pest infestation. In many cases, farmers who had limited access to the field because of insecurity and COVID-19 movement restrictions. WFP plans to support 8.6 million people this year, including almost 1 million of those hit hardest by the pandemic. To do so, the agency needs $172 million to fully implement the emergency operations in the country over the next 6 months. And I was asked about, before the briefing, about the situation in Mozambique. And I can tell you that we are deeply concerned about the armed violence and escalating conflicts in the province of Cabo Delgado, including Monchimbao da Praia, and the dire human rights and humanitarian situation that the violence is creating. The violence, killings, and forced disappearances, kidnappings, and other violations against civilians must end. Those responsible must be held to account. It is vital that we are able to reach people impacted by the violence with life-saving assistance and protection. We call on all concerned to ensure that humanitarian agencies are guaranteed safe, unhindered, and immediate access to support affected civilians. And a quick update from our COVID-19 efforts in COVID-19 pandemic in Guatemala for today, where there are more than 60,000 confirmed cases and nearly 2,300 deaths. The UN team, led by the resident coordinator, Rebecca Arias, is working closely with local authorities. We recently provided more than 177,000 worth of medical and protective supplies to the Ministry of Health to boost treatment capacity across 23 hospitals nationwide. With funding from the UN Multi-Partner Trust Fund, UN agencies have set up a program to ensure that human rights, gender equality, multiculturalism, and other key UN values are maintained during the quarantine while protecting health workers and providing support to vulnerable people across the country. And our friends at the UN Refugee Agency and the UN Migration Agency said today they are troubled by a proposal to intercept boats and return those attempting to cross the English Channel irregularly. The UN agencies warn that the deployment of large naval vessels to deter such crossings may result in harmful incidents. UNHCR and IOM reiterate their call to governments in Europe and elsewhere to increase research and rescue efforts to combat human smuggling and trafficking rings. On a separate note, IOM said that despite the mobility restrictions put in place in the wake of the COVID-19 outbreak, over 1,200 migrants lost their lives during migration in the first half of the year. And this is globally. Responses to the pandemic, including border closures and other measures, have increased the risks of migratory journeys by pushing people into more perilous and deadly situations where human rights, humanitarian support, and rescue is increasingly unavailable. The IOM also noted that data collection is increasingly difficult during the pandemic, and the true number of migrant deaths globally is likely to be much higher. And just a reminder, as we told you earlier this week, the UN team in the Pacific region, led by our resident coordinator, Sanaka Samaran Sinha, in Fiji, is organizing a virtual concert called Pacific Unite, Saving Lives Together. The event is taking place tomorrow at 7 p.m. Fiji time, 3 a.m. in New York, for those of you who don't sleep. It will be streamed on UN Web TV as well as archived. The virtual concert will bring together local, regional, and international artists to pay tribute to essential workers across the region and to renew the Secretary General's call for global solidarity to fight the virus. The Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, will participate by video, as well as His Royal Highness Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales, Fijian Prime Minister Frank Bainimarama, and New Zealand President Jacinda Ardern. I assume they will be speaking and not singing, and artists who are equipped will do the singing. Okay. Let's see what the chat function says, and if I have any questions. Hold on. Okay, I don't see, oh, Iftikhar, sorry, I'm not looking at the right place.
Thank you, Steph.
Yes, I got, okay, Iftikhar, go ahead, and then Nizar, and then Edie.
Thank you. So in his statement, the Secretary General has highlighted the adverse impact of this oil spill from this tanker off the Yemen coast. But what are the, could you please spell out, what are the conditions they are attaching against holding of UN inspection?
Listen, I can't, I'm not going to speak for the Ansar Allah, the Ansar Allah authorities that we're speaking to. You know, they have legitimate questions, which we're answering them. We're having dialogue, ongoing dialogue with them. What's important for us is that we get there as quickly as possible.
But it's been a long time since this dialogue is going on. Are you making any progress?
Well, you know, clearly we're not making that. We're moving in the right direction because we're continuing the dialogue. You know, they had given us the travel authorizations. We're waiting for visas. They're asking for more details. So we're not moving backwards, but we need to move forward at a much faster clip in order to get to the tanker, assess and make whatever repairs possible immediately.
Thank you.
Nizar.
Thank you, Stéphane. Do you hear me?
Yes, sir, I hear you.
Okay. Stéphane, with regard to the investigation in the bombing or the explosion in Lebanon, I understand that many parties are taking part in the investigation which is taking place there. Has the Lebanese government approached the UN to help in this respect or not?
No, I'm not aware of any official approaches to the UN to lead, to take part in an investigation. The responsibility, the primary responsibility, is obviously lies with the authorities, the national government in Lebanon.
There were some reports that the United Nations have raised the danger level to the staff working in Beirut to D. Is that correct? Can you confirm that?
Oh, I'm not going to talk about our security, the way we rate and security issues for our staff.
But were there any fatalities among the staff there, or
no, there were injuries, as we told you, notably with the naval personnel, the Bangladeshi naval personnel serving with the UNIFIL maritime component. The majority of them have been released from hospital. Still, a few of them are in hospital in stable condition. Though in terms of fatalities, while no staff died, 2 dependents of UN staff were sadly killed during the blast.
One last thing, the people in the neighborhood of Khandaq al-Ghamiq, which is an area very close to the government building, have complained that no relief or any support has been given to them so far, 10 days after the explosion. We in Al Mayadeen interviewed many people there who have suffered and have fatalities, and their houses are destroyed, but nobody yet approached them or even entered their area. Why is this?
I don't have that sort of granular information. Send me an email and I will send it off to my colleagues in Beirut. But we are trying to support, and we are obviously supporting the government of Lebanon. We're trying to reach everyone who needs help. I'm not able from here to speak to specific cases, but if you send me the details, we'll pass it on to our humanitarian colleagues in Lebanon.
I will. Thank you very much.
No problem. Edie. And then
Thank you, Steph. A couple of questions. I assume that David Beasley couldn't make it today.
Unfortunately, no. We're told it's a good reason. He's welcoming his first grandchild. So
Well, that is a good reason. On the Sefer tanker, you had said earlier this week that the UN was waiting for a reply from the Houthis. I assume that there has been no reply from the... And I'd just like you to confirm that there's been no reply to the latest response.
Right. We do not, we have not received from them all the necessary green lights and authorizations and visas that we need to send this technical team to the tanker. There continues to be a dialogue with them, you know, via Skype, via written letters. We're answering, they have questions, we answer them back and forth. But the main point, the headline is that we have not yet received all the permissions that we need in order to access the tanker. You know, to keep in mind that this tanker has not has received almost no maintenance or upkeep while holding over 1 million barrels of crude oil. With the systems, the tanker, everything deteriorating, and this is a risk of, as I said, of leaks, explosions, fire, all with, in a sense, we're seeing what happened in Beirut with imaginable consequences, right? We can imagine what would happen if the oil leaked or if the oil exploded. Ibtisam. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Edie. Sorry, my bad. Go ahead.
The appeal that you just announced for Lebanon, I believe you said $565 million.
Yeah.
I assume that is in addition to the appeal for immediate relief that I think got over $300 million at the joint fundraising event that France and the United Nations co-hosted.
This is kind of the detailed needs of what the UN needs. We've done the initial assessment. This is what we need.
Does the $300 million that was pledged during that conference go into?
Well, we hope. I think that the where the money goes still has to be seen. We hope that some of those pledges will go to the appeal. Ibtisam, please go ahead, and then Alan.
Thank you, Stéphane. So I want to come back to the statement you read about the United Arab Emirates and Israel agreement. So you are welcoming in your statement, you welcome the claim of suspending annexation, when as a matter of fact, Netanyahu himself said that the full plan is still on the table. But more importantly, facts on the ground show that confiscation of Palestinian land, building of settlements, etc., is just going nonstop. So my question to you is, why are you supporting the occupation, if you want, in issuing such a statement and ignoring the facts on the ground?
Listen, I think let me just put it this way. I don't agree with the logic that you infer from our statement. We are welcoming what was said, the paper that was issued jointly by the three leaders yesterday. For us, the suspension of annexation is very important and something that we've consistently called for. I don't think anyone can accuse the Secretary General of supporting the occupation, whether it's him, whether it's Mr. Mladenov, other UN or other UN officials, we have consistently spoken out against annexation, unilateral moves, anything that we see would put in jeopardy the two-state solution and a viable Palestinian state. So I don't think we can be accused of supporting the occupation. What we are supporting is an opportunity that we hope will create, an opportunity for Israelis and Palestinian leaders to re-engage in meaningful negotiations. I mean, this has been the Secretary General's message for quite some time. During his last briefing to the Council, during Mr. Mladenov's last briefing to the Council. This was announced yesterday. Obviously, we have to see about the implementation, but I think it's important that all three parties focus on the implementation as outlined in the statement.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have a follow-up. Of course, I mean, you are talking about suspending, but as I said, as a matter of fact, on the ground, even your own reports by OCHA in the last 2 weeks, at least, there were 100 Palestinians who were injured during demonstrations, peaceful demonstrations in Termus Haya, a village near Ramallah, where people were demonstrating against land confiscation and settlements building. We don't hear from there are UN reports from the different organizations about these issues and other issues, but from your office, from the Secretary General, we don't hear any condemnations for these issues. And your statement talks about suspending, where, as a matter of fact, there is no suspending on the ground. The facts on the ground show that Israelis are doing whatever they want to do and continuing with that.
We will continue.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, no, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. We will continue through our regular reporting mechanisms, whether it's OSHA, Mr. Mladenov, to report the facts as we see them on the ground, and we will continue to speak out against violations as we see them. And our position has not changed. We see this statement as an opportunity. We look forward to its implementation. Alan and then Nabil.
Thank you, Stéphane. Can you hear me?
I'll give to some. Sorry. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah. As you know, President Putin today called the P5 leaders plus Germany and Iran to convene urgent summit regarding the situation in Persian Gulf. He's going to discuss the security situation in Persian Gulf, Iran, JCPOA. So I just have a question, whether does the SG find that it's the right time to convene such a meeting? And has he been in touch with any of the parties mentioned by President Putin? Thank you.
It's not for him to opine. I mean, I think the P5 can meet without the Secretary General opining. We've always maintained that the JCPOA was a very important diplomatic act, and that it should continue to be supported. So our position of support towards the JCPOA remains unchanged, and whatever parties can do to support it, we would support. Nabil, and then Margaret Bashir is making an appearance.
Hello, Stéphane. Thank you. My question is, was the Secretary General briefed by the United States or Israel or the United Arab Emirates on this agreement or statement or announcement? Was he briefed about its details, its scope, its I don't know. What does it mean exactly? Because the UN should be part of this, but obviously the UN is not part of this agreement. Thank you.
Okay. No, the Secretary General was not briefed ahead of time.
And after, not all.
We've been in touch. We've been in touch with the relevant parties.
Thank you.
Okay, Maggie.
Hey, Steph. Question. I'm still confused on the Lebanon.
Video?
What?
No video?
I started it. You don't see it? Oh, wait. I have to push the button. Hold on.
Okay.
There you go. Did you miss me that much?
There you, Maggie. How are you?
Hi. On the Lebanon appeal, I don't see like anything in my inbox. I don't see anything on the OCHA Lebanon website.
Yeah,
I'm a little confused about the amount. Is it for the entire UN? Is it include UNICEF, World Food Program, everybody? Like, could we get a little more detail?
To say that UN appeals or humanitarian appeals are somewhat complex and complicated would be stating the obvious. This just literally came in as we were doing the briefing. So we're trying to get more information and more details that our OCHA colleagues will send out. So if you could just be a little bit patient, we'll send something out as quickly as possible in writing.
Okay, and one other thing on damage to UN property in Beirut from the explosion. For instance, maybe Esqua, they're in downtown. It's an all-glass building. Have you guys had a damage assessment?
I've not been told of damage to Esqua. There was obviously damage to the ship. To the ship, which is considered UN property. So we will start the usual procedures when those things happen. But we'll see. We'll try to get an assessment of damage to UN property. If there was, I don't think it was anything very significant, as we weren't told. But we'll see.
Okay. Thanks. Have a good weekend.
You too, Maria Krenova.
Hi, Steph. Do you hear me okay today?
Perfectly.
Good. Yeah, you mentioned that UN is in touch with Belarusian authorities in New York, Geneva, and Minsk. Could you elaborate? What did you mean by that? You mean that you contacted the representatives here in New York and
so through the permanent mission here in New York, the permanent mission in Geneva, obviously where our human rights colleagues are based, and the resident our resident coordinator with counterparts in the government in Minsk.
Also, and what was their answer?
I can't go into that, but we've obviously made our position known both publicly and privately.
Also on the same topic, the special rapporteur of United Nations about human rights in Belarus, who is actually in Warsaw, ironically, she told in interview to us today that she considers it would be better to organize a conference under OSCE, or United Nations, to avoid one country's initiatives. So I wonder if UN consider the possibility of such conference to discuss the situation in Ukraine.
I looked into that report. I haven't seen it. Obviously, as you know, the special rapporteurs are independent, but I'm not aware at this point of any movement in that direction, but we will check.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Did I miss anybody? Ibtisam, you have another question?
Yes, thank you. I have a follow-up. So you said that you have been in touch with all parties after the announcement. Does this include Palestinians? And then what is your position on the Palestinian reaction regarding this agreement that they describe it as a step in the back? Thank you.
It's not for me to react to somebody else's reaction. We are in constant touch. Mr. Mladenov's office is in constant touch with his two main interlocutors, which are the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli government. Okay, have a great weekend. Hasta Monday or hasta lunes, as they say. Bye.